David Raposo. It's so nice to talk with you.
Yeah, likewise. It's
Yeah.
very exciting.
So let's get this interview started. Take us back to where your interest in theater began.
Oh gosh. Okay, so my mom dragged me into a theater camp like eons ago, right? And they were doing Midsummer Night's Dream. And I was one of the mechanicals, like that clown troupe that what's that guy's name? What's the donkey's name? I can't remember. Inconsequential. But I was like one of those people that hated it. That was terrible. I was like, I had the worst time. I was just like so bored and like could not like get attached to it. I think I was just like too young for the material, and I was like, screw this. I'd rather play Pokemon, you know. And so I sort of gave it up for a long time, but then I was always good at like memorizing things and like was really into like reenacting scenes from movies. Like I was famous in my family for reenacting that scene where Timon and Pumbaa find Simba in The Lion King. Like I knew that like the back of my hand, and I would just like do it. And if someone interrupted me, I would have to like start over. You know, it's like one of the situations. And so because of all of that nonsense, my mom was like, I gotta get him into something theatrical. So years ago, UMass Dartmouth used to open up their musical theater program to like outside people to fill their ensemble roles. And so I got dragged into it, and I sang that song Kermit sings, why are there so many songs about rainbows? Rainbow Connection. And so I sang that, and then I got in, and then that was a Vita. And so that was my first real like experience, and I loved it. Specifically the guy who played Che, whose name I'll never remember, but he will just go down in infamy for me as like a very influential person, because I was just watching him like be present on stage and just like really like eating that role. And I was just so enamored by the prospect of that I sort of fell in love in that moment there. And so I've just not stopped ever since.
And that was the beginning of the end, so to speak.
For sure. Yeah, the bug bit me, I guess you could say, you know.
That's awesome. So you go on to sort of pursue theater in high school, I'm assuming. You participated in your drama club at high school, community theater around. What's really cool is we come from the same area of Massachusetts. So we ran in sort of the same circle. We didn't really know each other until now, which is really exciting.
Yeah, I can't believe I missed you, you know.
But we have so many mutual friends, and I know a lot of the companies that you work for, so it's really awesome that we sort of, ran the same track. Moving sort of, you're a senior in high school, or, junior or senior in high school, you're looking to study theater in college. How did you come to that conclusion? How did you pick a program? What made you decide to study theater in the first place? Were you juggling other things as well?
I think a question that I was juggling other things. I was really into the idea of like child psychology and like being a therapist of some sort, like sort of, being in a school, like a guidance counselor of some sort, but like focusing on like a more of like a, therapeutic route, that was something that was like very interesting to me. And I've always liked writing, but that's sort of just like, a step to the left, not quite another path, So that was always something that was in the back of my mind. But I think the question that I've always like asked myself, and that other people have challenged me with, is if you can't see yourself doing anything else, then you should do theater. But if you can picture a life where you can be happy and not do theater, then you should do the other thing, And so I just had to like really reckon with that question pretty early on, and I couldn't really see myself doing anything else, being happy doing anything else, or I would regret my entire life if I didn't try, So I had some really awesome mentors in Dartmouth High School. This one person in particular, whose name is Richard Blair, who was pretty instrumental in like just having the theater program exist in the middle school, which is where I really was sort of was really like the real breeding ground for like my growth. It didn't exist before he came around to make it happen. Him and someone who I'm sure we both know, Kelsey Brago, super influential in making that program just like happen. And if it were not for that and for his guidance throughout, because he started in the middle school and then transferred into the high school drama program, and he was just a huge guiding hand the entire time, coming from his own experiences. I think he did like the whole LA thing, you know, and was a spectacular actor in his own right. And he was the lead in 42nd Street at the Zeitarian like all those years ago. And he was just a huge like mentor, and just was able to help me like pinpoint like monologues and let me know like, you know, this and that and the other thing. And then of course Juan Rodriguez, who was my choir teacher, was also a very, very huge influence, because he was just so interested in pushing the boundaries of what high school theater could do and like the material that we were able to do. So that was really cool as well. So those people like really let me know that it was possible. And then picking a program, gosh, that was hard, because I ended up going to the Hartt School at the University of Hartford, their music program there, which is a BFA program. So it's like a conservatory adjacent to the university, right? As our other programs, right? So I think the reason why I chose that is because not only is it a really good program, but it also had a university attached to it. So if I needed a fallback, I could do that. So that was sort of like a safety net for me in a way. And I was able to get a minor at the same time, because we're taking so much text. Yeah, we were taking so much text analysis. I just took like 2 writing classes, then I had my English minor, which like is the same thing as getting a PFA in musical, to be quite honest. But at least it's something you can go back, like if you wanted to get your master's in something else later on, like that window is like sort of open for you, and those credits are transferable.
So your minor, what's your minor in?
English.
Amazing. That's
yeah. But you could have done business, like you could have done other minors if you like had the time, you know. The English minor is like easy because of what I said earlier, all that text analysis and like, you know, all that kind of stuff. So
is that something sort of presented to you, or is that something that you kind of had to forge your own path to, you know, work towards that minor?
Forge my own path on that one. No one was like, hey, you can also like do this. I just had the idea that I could, because it was attached to an entire all these other programs, right? And I'm required to take AUCs anyway while I'm there. So we had access to all that stuff. And I was like, I have time to take a writing class. I'm going to take the writing class, you know, because I think the way that writers and actors approach material and the way that they approach like formulating worlds and, you know, characters is very similar. Mm-hmm. So it was just a good way to like sort of get into that mindset in like another direction. It only helps you to inform, you know, how you're going to approach a role better, you know. So that was really.
Yeah, life experience in all different forms can, you know, help you in this crazy career path.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk a little bit about sort of what the struggles and successes were in your time at college? I know, you know,
sure.
That can be such a time of growth, and in a program, you know, like yours, I'm sure the growth was crazy immense. So pick a few moments maybe that were some, you know, struggles, some really big successes, and kind of weigh the, you know, opportunities that you were given.
Sure. You know, the biggest struggle was honestly the audition. I was late to my audition. I think that's the only reason why I got in, was because I was late. Because they show, and the reason why is because you act first, you act and sing first, and then you go and dance, right? And I'm going to tell you right now, the first ballet class I ever took was that audition. I had never taken, I had never taken a ballet class. I had never worn tights before. Dance belts were foreign to me. So there's all this like new pressure like on the lower half of my body that is like unfamiliar in a huge way. And like, here I am in these weird tights that like I don't know if it's the right size. Like my mom helped me get them, you know, like I have no idea, like no guidance in that respect, you know. So here I am looking like a total idiot, just like in my weird tights, in my like ballet shoes that have never been used before, so they're definitely not broken in. And like here I am trying to do bar combinations for the first time, and I'm like, what? And then if the bar you can hide, you know, a little bit, but then you do across the floor, and then it's like, oh no, you have to like, I don't know, leap around. Never ballet was, and to this day is still not my strong suit.
You're not alone. There are a lot of people.
But it was crazy. And if it was on that audition alone, I would have been passed. But then because I was late, because the campus was confusing and the language of like where you had to go, and were changing buildings at the time. Like when I got there, there was a new facility being built, so they were out of their original space in new spaces, and it was all like everything was like a kerfuffle. Yeah. So I did that first, and then I did my acting and singing stuff, and I think that because I was able to like show sort of like individual like artistry in whatever form I was able to at that time, I think that that's what like got me in, because that's what's great about the Hartt program, is that they really foster individual artistry, which is really cool. They're not so focused on making you like a machine, you know. They're much more interested in like figuring out who you are as a performer and as an artist, which is really, really cool. I mean, obviously the pressures are still there, right? But as it is with any program. But yeah, so that was like the biggest the craziest failure. And then dance, it never got better. I mean, ballet was just the biggest struggle, and it like really made me feel like it was like not gonna happen, you know, for me. And it was like, you know, musical theater, like obviously dance is like a huge part of it, especially like if you're trying to get in ground level. Being in a chorus is a really good way to get like Broadway credits under your belt, you know what I mean? Like get experience, and just like, you know, it gets you in the door easier, especially when you're younger, you know.
Yes, especially when you're younger. It's really cool that, you know, I think it's really important for young actors especially to know that sometimes it can seem like there's all this type of pressure that you need to be a good triple threat, everything needs to be strong. You're singing, dancing, and acting. And the reality is that schools like Hartt and many other programs are accepting kids who, you know, maybe aren't as strong in the dance department or aren't as strong in the vocal department, because you know, programs need kids of all different skill sets and all, you know, with all different strengths.
Absolutely.
So sometimes, you know, even if you do feel like you bombed the ballet audition, you know, they'll see your strengths in your, you know, on your monologue and, you know, vocal portion of your audition, and you still can get in through that. The different components don't always, you know, they're not always equal.
It's true. I think like what's most important is like, it's such a tired thing to say, but it's just so true. Like you just have to show yourself. And that's really hard. You know what I mean? I feel like that's why we go to these programs, is so that we can work to show ourselves. So it's kind of weird that like the prerequisite for the audition to like have the most success is to show yourself. So that's why I feel like as much practice that you can get is like really, it really is will serve you, you know, in the long run, because you just have to practice being seen, you know. It's a whole thing, you know. So if you can, and being able to like make choices, and, you know, how do you view things in the way that you want it to be viewed, and like showing that so that you can then work with like the other vision across the room, you know, is really important too. Yeah, man, so crazy.
Successes go in college, in your college program? Do you have any moments that really stand out to you and you were like, you know, sort of feeling on top of the world? You felt like you were in the right place?
Yeah. It took me a while to feel that I was in the right place, to be quite honest. There was a moment where I was going to drop out. And if it wasn't for summer stock, like getting, I guess my one big success in the middle was like getting enough experience and like gathering up enough like technique and like skill to then like apply it to like things that were outside, and that sort of validating me as a performer and then giving me confidence, you know. And that's a huge part of like what makes you a successful performer is the confidence in yourself that you can do it, you know, whether it's fake or not. I mean, it doesn't matter, but like you having confidence is really important for, you know, your development, like as an artist, because it allows you to, you know, just be and do the things that you feel like you want to do. Right. And then I guess the hugest accomplishment out of college was my showcase, because I got an agent immediately after, which is a whole other conversation. But in that moment, it made me very proud, because getting called back to a decent agency right off the bat made me feel really good. And further, you know, goes to your point of like, you don't have to be the best dancer or whatever to like be seen by someone to get recognized for your talent. You know, like if you can do the thing that you do really well, then you're marketable in that thing, and then you can make it off of that, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of, you know, taking a step back, I know with some of the other people that I've talked with, you know, they've had different perspectives on Showcase as a college student than, you know, they do now. I know I sort of have the same thing. I remember in college, you sort of, you know, put all this pressure on Showcase and what Showcase is. You know, when you first introduce yourself to all of these agents and casting directors and everyone in the industry that you think is, you know, so important. And it is important to an extent, but it's also really valuable to remember, and I can see this now, and I'm sure you can as well, that it's not necessarily make it or, you know, break it. You know, there are lots of people who go in and don't, you know, get an agent right out of Showcase. There are people who I know, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, who did get agents right out of Showcase and then are not currently with those agents and now are with different agents. And things change throughout. However, it is something that's really important when you pick your college or what program you're going to attend, sort of what the Showcase process consists of. I'm not super familiar with Hartt's Showcase program right off the bat. Would you mind sort of explaining what their Showcase looks like? Looks like while you were there, at least?
Yeah, it does take many forms from year to year. Even when I was there, they were trying different things. But the year that I was there, we have the MT program, which is the musical theater program, and then we have the AT program, which is the actor trainers, right? And we are, while we do like grow up together in like the same class, I think by the end of it, it was just 18 of us between the two. We are often separated a lot. But for our showcase, we were kind of brought together. So each one of us were allotted two things, right? So basically, like if you're a singer, like you'd be best to do like an up-tempo and a ballad, you know? Or if you were, or you could like do a dance number and a song, you know? And the actors would do like a monologue and a scene, right? So they were sort of like cross between each other to sort of make it like one flowy experience, you know? Because I think what ultimately people try to do for showcases is to make it as much of a show as they can, you know, leaning into the show of the showcase. So that was what we did. So a lot of people were like scrambling around trying to like find material. And I think what really worked for me was I picked my songs at the top of the year and I did not change them. I was like, I'm going to work these songs. I'm going to work these songs all year long. I'm going to take them to master classes. I'm going to bring them into auditions. I'm going to work them in front of as many people as I possibly can so that when that showcase comes, that thing is solid, rock solid. It is just me, you know, like all that work to like be yourself. That is what it takes. You know what I mean? Like I just wanted to show who I was. The songs are secondary. Honestly, they don't matter. You know, what matters is, are you able to be seen through those songs? And what does that take? It's not necessarily like the right material, quote unquote. It's you just being so comfortable and just letting that material be a part of who you are. So I think that that's why it was so successful for me. It was because I just like worked the hell out of it, you know, and I did not deviate. There were moments where I was like, oh no, I should like change it or whatever. And then I'm glad I stayed the course, you know, because it ended up being successful, you know.
There's also something that you can sort of apply that, I guess, skill set to any audition, you know, work your rep book the same way, work, you know, if you're auditioning for colleges, work your audition pieces the same way. And that's really hard to do, especially if you're indecisive. And, that's a testament to you to be able to.
And especially if like, don't get me wrong, I am indecisive, but like sometimes I have a hard time making choices. But I think also to that end, like, yeah, it's good to like get it out in front of people. But sometimes, especially if you're auditioning for college, like you don't have that, like that's not something that's like available to you. Like, what are you gonna like? You could get your friends involved, but like, I don't know, your friends get pretty tired of that kind of stuff pretty fast. So, I mean, so it's like like there's not like a slew of just open calls that you can go to like just practice rep in front of people. You know what I mean? Like, and, always having the time to even do that, so so that's why it's like good to like find places like, I mean, with what you're offering, like definitely giving a place to like practice is like hella important, just so it can like your body,
Exactly. Yeah. And if you can't work with someone like me, it's like you said, line your friends up, line your parents up, and let them watch what you're doing. And just what's really cool about acting and performing is like it's really just people being people. So you don't have to necessarily have a degree to be able to, or have the input to be able to put in give some feedback, which is really important as well. So you graduate from Hartt.
Yeah.
And what's next for you? Where do you go?
I go on a cruise ship. I got cast in Disney Cruise Line for the Fantasy 2. So it was like their new ship, and it they just had their maiden voyage, and they were looking for new cast members, right? And the way that Disney works is that they operate their shows as a repertory company. So like, and a repertory company is like one group of actors doing multiple shows, right? And like switching roles. Like, so for example, like I was Aladdin on the main stage. I can say that. I was Aladdin on the main stage, right? Not to be confused with the real Aladdin, yeah. And so I was him in one show, but then I was in the ensemble of like another show, like the Wishes show. But I was understudying the guy for that. And that guy was understudying me in Aladdin. And then like the guy who like plays the genie in one is like has like a featured something in another, and it's just like on and on. So we did like 5 shows twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, and it was insane. It was the most insane experience I've ever had, just because like I just gotten an agent, right? And so what's the one thing you want to do with your agent when you get them is work with them. Not be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, where you can't like we didn't have like internet, or you did, right? But it wasn't like very reliable or fast. Like sending an email took some time. Now send that email with a video file and it's an all day kind of thing, So it was hard. You are sort of away from things. But what was really good about the ship ultimately was, seeing East and West Caribbean, which was amazing. Getting to know a wide, diverse group of people from all sorts of cultures. Like it's like the world is on that ship, like everything is represented. It's a very wonderful melting pot.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And then of course, you are not spending any money. So that is what enabled me to move to this very expensive place called New York. Yeah. And it was pretty lucky. I was actually in college senior year, and my roommate at the time, his boyfriend was like, oh, there's this place available in like Washington Heights, but like he doesn't want it, and it's like X amount of dollars a month. And I was like, I'll take it. I just took it, and I was like, I want a place to live after I come off of this ship, and I was like, I'll just do it now and sublet. And so I was subletting at the time I was on the ship, so I like had it just like all lined up like pretty okay, was able to get the money, was able to like have the place. And then after the ship ended, I was on the ship for about like a year, all said, right? You rehearse, and then the contract is like X amount of months. And now the contracts are a little bit different, but when I was there, they were long chunks, yeah. And so after that was all done, I went back into the city so I could start working, like with my agency, right? And it took a long time to find any sort of artistic home or any sort of like, artistic validation, right? I ended up working actually, okay, so the off-Broadway production of Natasha Pierre and the Comet of 1812 was just starting the year that I was there. Okay. And they had a dinner theater portion. So I was a waiter for that show. So it was so amazing to like, cause I found it on Craigslist. It was just like, oh, they're looking for like Russian performers, because the whole concept was like, everyone was going to be like this Russian hustler, and like they were going to go around and be all like hot and Russian and like serving vodka or whatever. It didn't last very long because it was a dumb idea, but it was a really cool way to like see like a lot of everyone came to see that show. Yeah. And that music, like, are you kidding me? That score is so good. When I first saw the website for it, I was like, this is gonna be trash. This is probably hokey. Like this is like, I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have to suffer through this performance. But then they performed for us, and I was blown away because like freaking Philippa So was in that thing. Yeah. That was like her first like big, I think her first big thing. That's like what got her into like Hamilton. Yeah, and, like
to see it at the very beginning of its stages is really more impressive too.
I mean, I think it had a run at ART before it got, which is Harvard's master's program, right? Yeah. So it had a life there, and then returned to then have a second life. So this musical's gone through like a lot of iterations, but geez Louise, is that score so beautiful. So it was like the best job it was like, thinking back on it, it was such a fantasy. Like I'm doing bottle service for all these crazy people, making like decent amount of money, selling bottles to people, and like getting to hear this magnificent score night after, and I never got tired of it. And that's how I knew it was like a really good show. I never, ever, ever got tired of listening to it. Like sometimes on matinees, I would sneak in and just like watch it because there would be empty seats, and I would just like go in and watch the show, and just
that's the best.
Every time it was amazing. So that happened, and then I kind of went on a couple of tours. I did some parody stuff. I did a parody of the Hunger Games called the Hungry Hunger Games, and then that was cool. And I got to develop that script a little bit. Nice. I got to write some jokes in and like improv with the cast. It was just 5 of us, and I got to improv with the cast and sort of like develop what the new jokes were going to be together. And that was such a cool experience. And then touring that was a whole thing. But then that led way into like the next thing that I did, which was Spank, which was a parody of the 50 Shades of Grey. And that was even cooler because there was more room for improv, and there was just 3 of us. So it was just like me and like 2 wonderful ladies. And we just like had this like amazing, it was like one long SNL skit essentially, but that was a really cool experience too, because it was just such a vulnerable thing to do, because it was so bare bones, and it was just like you went to the town, you knocked it out, and you went to the next town, and you just kept going. It was really, really
cool. So you're in New York City, you're working in New York. A lot of times kids are, you see actors get the job, but you don't really necessarily see the behind the scenes work, what the audition process actually consists of, how that can be so emotionally and physically draining. We've talked in the past with past guests about what it can look like to not have representation, and to be sort of chasing after sort of auditions. What does it look like having representation? How did your audition game change, I guess?
It looks exactly the same as not having representation. I'm going to be quite honest with you. Having representation means nothing. It's a really good thing to have. It's wonderful to say at parties. However, you still have to work as hard, because you're not the only person that the agent has. Especially with, I'm at DBA, which is a huge agency, right? There's a lot of people. So like, it's easy to get lost. So like, if you don't like remind them that you're around, or be like, hey, I'm auditioning for this, like I want to be auditioning for these kinds of things, like you still have to go as hard. Because I constantly was, on backstage, you know, on Playbill, looking for all these auditions, looking for open calls to go to just to submit myself so that I could go back to my agent and be like, hey, I have this offer. Do you want to like negotiate it? Or like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I got this role. Here are the kinds of roles that you should be submitting me for, you know? Like, yeah, your agent should like know you and like, you know, they should like have a good like idea of like who you are. But like, and I will say that the one positive thing about having an agent is they can get you into doors that you cannot. And that's a really great thing. Like I was able to audition for Pippin like years ago when that was first coming around, and then getting submitted in for like, you know, pilots or like movies that I would just like that you're just not privy to it, you know, or like those sort of casting calls are not given public, right? Yeah.
Especially film and TV.
Especially film and TV, yeah. So those are, it's really good for them. They're really good for those kinds of things and really good for just getting you seen in front of like really good people. That's sort of the name of the game, right? You just want to be seen by these people as much as possible so that you then develop a relationship with them. And, you know, that relationship could be good or bad, you know, but, you know, at least you are known in some capacity, right? That's always good, you know? So yeah, having an agent, not having an agent, I can't say that it matters much in terms of like your success. Yeah, it helps, but you still have to work as hard as someone who doesn't have an agent.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of shifting gears a little bit, but sort of the same question. I know you are a member of the union, the Actors Union. A member of both unions, SAG and
I didn't take SAG, no.
So, you know, a lot of kids also sort of question how you get there, how you know, get to be a unionized actor, what that process looks like, and what the sort of decision to join looks like for some actors, and also how that can change your career and what that means for you. To kind of hear your input on that.
Sure. So you get your equity card through one of two ways. You accumulate enough EMC points, equity membership candidate points, and that comes from doing like projects at equity houses. So, or you know, equity approved tours. I know TheaterWorks is one of those. What a popular way that people sort of get into that, right? Disney doing the parks does get you EMC. If you get enough of those, you are then eligible to get into the union. I think you can buy your way into you used to be able, years ago, you
need 25 points. It used to be 50.
Oh, wow. That's,
yeah. And then
but
you have to pay in, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I did not get EMC points because Spank was an equity tour. Because I was doing it for long enough, they were like, hey, here's your first chance to get in, because you don't have to take it right away. You can prolong it for a little while. There does come a point where you must take it if you're doing
on Broadway without your equity card.
you must stop. And so I had I was talking with my agent, and they were like, you should take it because we can put you in for more stuff and people will take you more seriously. And then I talked to someone else who was like, you should not take it because you haven't had enough experience. Your resume is not strong enough to hold up against other people's resumes who are also going to be in equity calls. And so I had those two voices in my head, and I ultimately ended up taking it because at the time I sort of like wanted health insurance and like, you know, benefits and all the things that like equity sort of like promises, right? So I did end up taking it, but do I regret it? Kinda, because it stops you from doing non-union work. And there's some really great non-union work out there. Like, I think that there was a tour of Saturday Night Fever that I had to turn down that was paying like $1,000 a week. That's not bad. No. And you get to be on the road. Like, that's pretty good, but I couldn't take it because I was part of the union. And that's like, who cares? You know what I mean? It's not about like the money necessarily. I didn't bring up that to make that a point. The point is like, it was a job that I turned down, and it was experience that I do not have, right? And sometimes equity can get in the way of that. So I know like clout is a super important thing, you know, like I feel like ultimately a lot of the things that a lot of the things that we're talking about, like, you know, success of showcase, the agent that you get, and like the union status versus not union status is all about like clout and worth. And if you can just like back away from that for a second and just like look at like what you need at that time, you should do that thing. You know, like, don't worry about like what validation comes from any of these things, because ultimately, like, having an agent, not having an agent, who cares? Success in showcase, not success in showcase, cares, you know? Like, ultimately in the long run, if you're going to be doing this for the long haul, those things are a blink of an eye, and they happen just like that. So union status is a little bit different in that it sort of lets you audition with greater ease. So I am glad that I took it for that, because now I can be on the equity website and go to any open call I want, get an appointment, and like get seen. Or if I'm there, I can drop in, you know, depending on like what season it is, you know.
I can authority over the non-union actors.
Yeah, and it lets you get seen, it lets you get an appointment, and you can, like, you know, we talk about practicing rep. It's a really good way to do that, you know, really good way to just like show up, get there, get your slot, do your thing, and just leave, and just practice auditioning, you know? So I'm glad that I did it for that reason, because that is super helpful to get seen in that way, you know?
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that. And then, you know, I know now you're really actively involved with the Brunch Theater.
Yes.
And, you know, I really love when I hear actors kind of take different positions inside the theater. And I know you sort of worn a couple different hats there, and at a couple other places, a couple other different theaters too, from what I know. I think it's really cool when you can sort of step out of the actor's shoes and sort of step into some of the other creative team roles. Tell me a little bit about that, and sort of how you got into that, what interests you about all that, what it is that you've done at the Brunch Theater, exactly, or at other places as well.
Yeah, totally. So I think for me, like, there was a moment where I sort of like fell out of love with musical theater in the way that I did when I was in college. And I really gravitated more towards like physical forms of theater, like Frantic Assembly, Tectonic, Elevated Repair Service, like those types of groups. And the work that they were generating was just so awesome to me, you know, and like the collaborative process of it was something that I thrive under collaborative circumstances. So I was really searching for those things, and like I was really interested in doing different types of projects. Yeah. So when Brunch Theater came around, they were looking for someone to do sound effects. Like in this particular play that they were doing, they wanted someone to, the playwright wanted to do something for like the sound effects for the car and the ambiance of the car and like what was happening inside, about these three girls who were taking a trip through like a specific town that didn't align with their political agenda, and like having to deal with like that area. It is basically the broad stroke of that play. So I was like the voice app and like the thing, and like my audition, I like came in, I just like made a bunch of wacky sounds, and they were like, "You're hired," and I was like, "Great." And so that's sort of, so I had that one role for that one thing, and then it expanded into I was doing the Foley for the entire show. So I ended up doing all the sound live for that show. And then that sort of like became my role for them. I was like their sound guy. And then I was sort of approached by their associate director, Liz Rogers at the time, who, if she's watching this, I fucking love you, you're a rock star. She came up to me and was like, do you want to do like a soundscape project? And I was like, yeah, I want to do a soundscape project. And at the time, the Cape Town water crisis was happening. And I was like, perfect. That's something that I really want to explore. I really want to like take this little nugget of something and like turn it into like, you know, a group of people trying to find water underground, you know, and like making like a whole lore around it. And that was really cool. And then, I don't know, in the meantime, I had been like with some other groups here and there, doing devised work, doing group theater, doing different types of like writing projects, group writing projects, and just like developing just like pieces out of nothing, right? And so that really motivated me to continue on with with that like way of working. And then after that second round of brunch happened, I offered myself up to sort of like help on the producing side, because I love what they do. They are like a platform for emerging artists. So they collect people from like, you know, we focus a lot on marginalized groups these days, and always have been, like giving queer voices like a space to tell their stories in the way that they want them to be told. Like, you know, people of all different backgrounds, like the writers and the directors and the actors, like having those people tell their stories like that are like them, you know, which is unfortunately a revolutionary concept in American theater. But it was a real, I just love the work and like love what I was able to like do with them in that. And so when they approached me, they were like, we want to do like a millennial mime. And I was like, that's weird. That sounds like a weird concept. And I was like, I'll direct that. Like, I'll make that. And they were like, okay. So I like held an audition and like had all these people come in. And then I ended up finding like what I guess would be like my muse, I guess. I don't know. I work with her still. We are always collaborating. And we did this piece called 110X, which was all about anxiety as it applies to your phone, right? So like,
cool.
Basically this person was trying to like draw a picture and she just couldn't get it done because of all of like the distractions on her phone and like all like the movement and like the anxiety. And it was like really cool because I got to do my live sound with that piece. And I was able to get like, I think someone's girlfriend pressured their boyfriend into like playing cello for me. So that was like really cool. So yeah, that piece happened and then it was like somewhat successful. And then I just like kept working that way and like doing other pieces alongside with that. And as well as casting for the season and making sure that, you know, the sounds were good. And like we ended up like working with like other sound makers, like other DJs, DJ Lille, if she's out there. She was really cool to work with and like bring on and just like facilitate like this whole experience, you know? And then as time went on, I like kept directing pieces and developing more work with them, and then ended up sort of taking on sort of like a producer role in a way, you know, which was like really just sort of happened. And I learned a ton from the two of them, from Haley and Phil, who run the company, and just like being in the room and honestly being on the other side of that audition table and seeing people come in, and you know, the act of choosing them off of their backstage and like why I choose certain people as to like why I don't choose other people was super eye-opening for me to like do, just like as I continue to go out there to like submit myself. So that was really crazy experience.
Yeah, I'm sure. I know from experience, being on the other side of the table can be really eye-opening, and the things that you do pay attention to that, you know, as an actor you maybe don't think. You know, I think that is sort of an interesting conversation to have. Yeah, definitely. And that's a whole other conversation, but it's definitely something that, you know, anytime you have a chance to sit on the other side of an audition table, it can be so much more informative sometimes than you would ever imagine. And I can only imagine producing, being a part of, you know, sound mixing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Especially if you find, you know, if you have a passion and find a passion for it, and then can sort of take it and run with it. And it only helps, you know, your first love of theater, you know, acting. It's really cool, and more power to you for sort of stepping into those roles. And
it was kind of wild. There was one show where like there was an abandoned art building that we had access to, and we gutted the whole thing. We just like made the theater, you know. And that is why I moved to New York. You know what I mean? Like I moved to New York.
Where else can you do that?
Yeah, where else? Where else can you like have an abandoned art? And it was on like what? I think it was like on East. It was like in that NYU bar area, you know.
Yeah.
It's like on the East like 14th side. It's like close to Union. It was like close to Union Square. It was a great location, and it was just like this dusty building. And like I spent days, hours like sweeping, painting, making mold go away, and like building, you know, platforms and like assembling stuff, and like just to like make the space. It was just like, it was unreal. It was like one of the coolest things. And I think that's, if there's one bit of advice that I could give to people out there, is like, do not be afraid of getting involved in any project, because you never know where it's going to take you. You don't know like who's attached to it. You don't know like what sort of connections those people have. So I just think that if you think it's going to be, if you're like, ugh, I don't want to do sound effects for like a car, you never know what it's going to turn into, you know?
That's so funny. Yeah, but it's true. I mean, it's a small industry, and you know, take every opportunity you can and jump on it, and you'll learn something. You know, even if it's that you never want to do sound mixing again, you learned that and you got that experience, which can also really help you grow. And then I guess just to kind of close, you know, up the interview, if you could sort of go back and give baby David some advice, what would that be? You know.
Oof, that is a question. That is a question.
I know. If I think of it, it's like all these things come to my mind. I'm sure you have the same thing.
I think if I saw myself, I would just say, this is really tough. I think I would say,
sorry to put you on the spot.
Wow, yeah, this is a tough one. I literally don't know what I would say. I think first of all, if my little self saw my big self, I would be in awe, first of all, because like I was, you know, as a kid, a mess. So like I think if I would have a lot of, I would just say, please stop please stop getting in your way. Yeah.
Take a step out of your own way and let your, you know.
Yeah. Just trust. I think I spent a lot of my time like distrusting myself and distrusting like what I can do. And just, yeah, you truly are enough, you know?
Well, with that's really good advice. I agree with that 100%. It's very difficult in this industry to sort of lose track of why you do what you do. And I think when you're young, especially, it's really easy to get really, really, you know, stressed out by all of the different elements being thrown at you. And yeah, if you can just kind of take a breath and, you know, trust your process, trust what you're doing, and you're going to end up in the right place. And, you know, one day you'll look back and it's really inspiring to sit down with actors like you and sort of talk through their stories. I mean, how often do you get to, you know, sort of do that and look back at where you started off and sort of see your journey all the way to where you are now? And I really appreciate you sitting down. It's very inspiring to hear your kind of trajectory.
Yeah, well, thank you for giving me the privilege to, you know, to speak on it. You know, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm sure all of our viewers will really appreciate your story as well. So thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Allyson.
All right. Visit us online at www.allysonduart.com/ABC Coaching and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at ABC Coaching MT.